The only one who saw me weeping that Super Bowl night was just thought I was having a bad week, culminating in a fight with my boyfriend. Bad week, completely and totally correct. Fight with Michael, hardly. Getting it straight. The fact of the matter is that my grandfather died. Not Grandpa, Papa, Pop-Op, Dr. Hill, or even Mr. Inventor Man, please help me with my chemistry homework. It was grandfather. It had always been grandfather. For 17 years, he had been the man who gave my sister her incredible height, my father his unflappable mind, my aunt someone to dote on, and to my grandmother, Winky, he gave a husband. To me, he gave logic, 11 E's for math and science, driving skill, a summer home, potato and not potato, a stubbornness which challenges that of mules, and my 1930s Fred Astaire romanticism. We knew he was fading. We knew he was not going to last as long as my grandmother, but we never expected that he would actually go through with dying. So when I think about why I did not tell my friends, plenty of reasons emerge. It seems strange that I would not want to have someone come up to me, drape an arm around my shoulder, and say, I'm sorry to hear about your grandfather. Mine died just a little while ago, so I know what you're going through. Come and talk whenever you need to. But for some reason, that was the case. No matter how eloquently it was put, I did not want to hear it. Instead, I chose to stay withdrawn, keeping myself mentally and emotionally from my friends. Somehow I did it well enough that none of them guessed that anything was wrong. The only one who saw me weeping that Super Bowl night was just thought I was having a bad week, culminating in a fight with my boyfriend. Bad week, completely and totally correct. Fight with Michael, hardly. The facade would not last long. During the following week, it usually lasted until I got home, but a couple of times it did not last through fourth period. Each night I attempted to recharge my batteries, but something would prevent it. The strain of the whole situation brought out my impatience and irritations with the stupidest things. The color of my walls drove me straight up them. A comma splice in my history book made me unable to finish the reading. Imaginary numbers no longer made sense, especially when they were attached to signs and cosines and grids. Who cares why Michelle was going to Besançon par avion? I went as far as getting into a catastrophic fight over a tape with one of my closest friends. My parents saw what was happening and allowed me to stay home one day. I jokingly told my friends that I was not used to the whole 5-day school week thing, not caring if they believed me. The New York Times finally printed his obituary 4 days later. Julian W. Hill, nylons discoverer, dies at 91. It had a nice picture and lots of nice adjectives and adverbs as it described the history of nylon. The funny thing is that he honestly did not care about nylon, DuPont, or the fact that he invented the world's most useful plastic. He cared much more about Hawk Mountain Bird Sanctuary, which he founded, and where he found the remnants of his invention lining hawks' nests and wrapped around their babies' necks. He loved writing to Chevrolet to berate them about the pathetic quality of their automobiles and then buying a Chevy S10 pickup. And my grandfather adored women. He could tell if a woman was in the room the moment the door opened. He could tell if she was intelligent by the way she walked. He hated it when my sister and I dressed in t-shirts and shorts. For dinner, we would always be requested to wear skirts. The longer, the better. He despised the Golden Girls and loved Murder, She Wrote. He always rooted for the lone female on Jeopardy, and he would have loved Miss Sharma, my geography teacher. Every summer, he would bop about our 20-acre farm on the vineyard with his little yellow golf cart, raising hell. My sister and I were under strict orders to keep him company whenever we could. But Winky Mom and Dad never knew that we'd jump for the opportunity. When we were younger and he still worked in his vegetable garden, he taught us how to say tomato and potato. He told me about Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. I asked him to waltz with me at my wedding. As we got older, around 10 or 11, he let us drive his cart around. He would ask us about our sailing lessons. I would watch him complete the New York Times Magazine crossword puzzle. The strains of his violin would keep Corinne and me company as we played Frisbee in the early evening, and we promptly fell in love with swallows when he told us they ate mosquitoes. Watching Angela Lansbury became a ritual every Sunday night. The year I was 13, Grandfather kept a wide berth as my father patiently taught me to drive stick on the Chevy and how to shoot beer cans off a fence with a .22 rifle. I joked with my sister that every summer, Grandfather awaited the arrival of our station wagon more for our cats than for us. I also silently watched as he oversaw a hired gardener wading through his asparagus. The arrival of the mail became the best part of his day. His violin was sold. The name of a bird was still instantly recalled when its song was heard. He began watching the TV instead of the rolling mist blanketing the fields. He told my mother not to do anything in the name of pleasure that makes you miserable when she complained about the temperature of the Atlantic Ocean. I sang to him the worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, when he talked about finding places to die. Instead of helping the tree people in the power company, I sat with him and we watched them deal with the mess that Hurricane Bob left behind. On Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, I saw him for the last time. I hated it. The stick figure lying in the hospital bed was not my grandfather. The man who was a formidable 6'4" and overweight had disappeared. When I held his clammy hand, all I could feel were the bones covered by a thin layer of skin. I told him I loved him and drove 80 all the way home. My sister's silent, did not ask me to slow down. This is what my friends do not know. This is what the New York Times doesn't know. They don't know what I've lost. I'm not asking them to be omniscient, but why write an obituary if it will not be about the person's life? Why extend sympathy if it's impossible to comprehend the extent of the loss? So I wrote my own explanation, my own obituary. Barely surviving him are a wife of 63 years, a daughter, 2 sons, and 5 grandchildren, Alexander, Michael, Susanna, Kerna, and me, Lydia. Thank you.